How do you cross-examine someone who is a crazy, manipulative liar who wants you to either be with them or wants to see you in prison? Because if they can't have you, then no one can. Have you been falsely accused by a wife or ex-wife, an ex-girlfriend, or someone else that you had an intimate relationship with of either sexual assault, military sexual assault, rape, child abuse, or anything of that nature? If so, then watch this video. Please subscribe below for more content and for updated videos weekly. It's not uncommon for people that are formally in a relationship, like husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, roommates, to be falsely accused by their former lover, their former partner, or someone that they had a close relationship with. As a matter of fact, if there's a divorce or a child custody case on the line, then there's even an increased chance that you would be falsely accused of some sort of sexual assault, rape, domestic violence, or even child abuse or even child molestation. And I'm talking falsely accused, meaning that you didn't do it. There's even something called sexual assault in divorce that's been widely studied, and it's common in pretty much every country in the world. It's been very heavily studied in the United States, Britain, Canada, and Australia. They use an acronym. It's SAID, sexual abuse or sexual assault in divorce. It's so common for people to make allegations against or ex-husband as part of a divorce or child custody case that there's an acronym for it, and there are experts who go around the country testifying on behalf of people that are falsely accused. So how does someone come to accuse someone else of sexual assault? One of the biggest factors that we see is if the person suffers from some sort of a mental illness. Now, if you're watching this and you hate men and you're super biased, you're probably thinking, Mr. Waddington, you're a terrible person, you're calling women crazy. No, I'm not. What I'm referring to is women that are in fact mentally ill, that suffer from some sort of psychological disorder, and that falsely accuse ex-boyfriends, ex-lovers, ex-spouses, ex-husbands, whatever, of things in order to punish them or to gain an advantage in some sort of a divorce, child custody case, or just to make their life miserable. We've had, over 20 years, we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of cases where ex-wives, after the divorce or during the divorce, will use false sexual assault allegations against their husbands, and this is very common in the military, when the husband is either going to divorce them, move out of the house, seeks to alter child support payments or child custody agreements. The problem is spouses like that, the ones that are mentally ill, who make allegations, are very dangerous because they have the ability to gather evidence against you, to plant evidence. They know you so well and they have access. If you're in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife situation, they know pretty much everything about you. They have access to your bank records, your social media records. They share a bed with you. It isn't hard to plant evidence, to say, hey, on this night, 9 months ago or 3 years ago, I was raped. We went to a party. I had too much to drink and he forced me and I never told anyone because no one would believe me, or I did it for the sake of the children. I didn't report the rape. I just kept living with him until he filed for divorce for various reasons. Then I decided to report it. We get that all the time. So one of the primary mental illnesses that people who make false sexual assault allegations and false sexual assault allegations in military cases, military sexual assault allegations, are people that suffer from some sort of a personality disorder. And the primary one is usually a borderline personality disorder. Now, if you or a loved one are in a situation where you have a crazy ex accusing you of things you didn't do, I strongly recommend that you seek legal counsel, number one. Number two, you need to read a book called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. This is a book about borderline personality disorder, people that have that psychiatric illness and that suffer from it, and how to deal with them and how to avoid them and how to spot them. This book was eye-opening for me. You know, I read it a few years ago. I wish I would have read it 20 years ago when I was first getting started in the military law and dealing with military sexual assault cases and court-martial cases, because that book in the borderline personality disorder, people that are described in that book hit the nail on the head for many, many of my cases. And it gave me great insight when it came to cross-examining those types of alleged victims. Usually they're fake victims. And it gave me a lot of insight into helping my clients, advising them, and also helping them to see the light and to avoid those situations of getting involved with borderline personality women in the future. In this video, I'm talking about people falsely accusing other people of military sexual assault that have borderline personality disorder. So what are some factors to look for if you're dating or involved with someone and you're wondering whether or not they have borderline personality disorder? And if they do, you are at risk. The number one thing you're going to see with a person with borderline personality disorder is they're hot and cold. Their temperament and their demeanor is hot and cold. So if you go to a bar and you meet someone who's attractive and they're having fun and they're just like a ball of joy and they're ready and willing to go from 0 to 60 in the relationship, next thing you know, they're moving in with you, you're planning vacations, you might even be married and they're plotting about how they're going to adopt your children once you get divorced, although you're having a weekend TDY affair. In their minds, they're ready to move in and marry you and take over your life and replace your ex-wife, who is still married to you, by the way. And the problem is this: those things heat up really fast with these types of people, and they get cold and violent and aggressive very fast. And you'll start to see clues. And it's usually like super hot. They're so hot you can't resist the passion and the joy. According to the definition in the DSM-5, they're also very promiscuous, very sexualized. So they're very attractive to a lot of military men that are looking for some excitement. And they're also notorious in breaking up marriages because a lot of men will go for these types of women who are generally very appealing to them at the outset. They might have a wife who's at home taking care of the kids. You know, a lot of times marriages get into a rhythm, which is normal. Then a lot of these service members meet someone over the weekend who's just so much fun, so exciting, so sexualized, they feel alive again. Until the Monday morning after, where they tell the person, hey, listen, I got to go back to my wife. I really like you, but we can't continue. Then you end up with a stalker. Because one of the biggest indicators of someone who has borderline personality disorder is their fear of rejection and how they respond to rejection. As a matter of fact, that's one of the main things that psychologists and psychiatrists look at when diagnosing someone with this disorder. How do they deal with rejection? And it doesn't have to be just rejection of a lover. It could be rejection of a friend, because sometimes you have woman-on-woman attacks that happen from a borderline to just a random friend they met. When you tell them it's time to go, thank you for, I enjoyed this, or I got to go back to my life, they will start getting very aggressive, very defensive, very manipulative. Some will get emotional, some will get violent. They may or may not accept the rejection. The more advanced ones will plot out a way to re-interact with you. You might get a phone call after the weekend affair that you had saying, hey, by the way, I think I'm pregnant. Or I forgot to tell you, I think I might have an STD. Or you left your ring at my house. Or they might text your wife, trying to be friends with your wife or befriending your wife or girlfriend. And they'll start stalking you on the internet. Some of them will physically stalk you. There's plenty of cases and movies made about this, which are based on actual cases, where the woman will start stalking the man who rejected her. And it can be after even a one-night stand. We see these all the time with one-night stands where the client says, hey, I'm married. This is just for this TDY. It doesn't go beyond this. The woman says, oh, I understand. It's great. And they go have this passionate love affair. Monday morning, that woman is showing up at the guy's office to drop off some paperwork or interjecting herself into his life, showing up at the kid's school. And those are more passive-aggressive techniques, but it can begin to escalate. We've had cases where the guy continues to reject the woman, where the woman will eventually start dropping hints that maybe something that happened between them wasn't consensual. Maybe I had too much to drink. Hey, you knew I took an Ambien. Why did you take advantage of me? We need to meet up over coffee and talk this out. If that happens to you, you're pretty much screwed. How you handle that from that point out can make or break your case. You need to document everything that's being said. You should not be apologizing and admitting to guilt, because that person, the borderline, is probably recording and capturing everything you say for use against you. And it may be great. You could go meet them for coffee have her explain her side, you explain your side, and then you guys have sex in the car. And everything's great again. You're back to normal, and then she starts talking. When are you leaving your wife? Hey, do you want to go have coffee another day? And it's usually a love-hate relationship. And then when there's hate going on, when she's hating on you, then it's pretty intense. There's threats. I'm going to ruin your career. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to call your chain of command. Sometimes they will actually show up at your commander's office. We've had this happen a couple of times where you have a colonel who goes into he's a member of the general staff. He goes into the general's office, and guess who's sitting in the office talking to the general on the open door policy about nothing in particular, but just wanted to come and thank the general for his service to the country, but doing it in a way so that the colonel that she had an affair with will see her there. Then they'll meet in the hallway. It just goes round and round. It's kind of like the movie Fatal Attraction, where if you give in a little bit, everything's great again, very hot and very passionate, but it's impossible to separate yourself from that person. So again, read the book, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. It's very scary, actually. It's a book written by psychiatrists who deal with these types of people with borderline personality disorder who have dealt with them for many years. It's scary to read it, but it's best for you and your family members and loved ones to know how to avoid these people. And so what ends up happening is these things can go on and on and on. Let's say the woman does get pregnant on the second encounter. That's a very common tactic. The old, oh my God, the second time that we got back together, I'm pregnant. Now they have their claws in you literally for the rest of your life, or for the life of the child, and they will keep coming around, keep harassing you, and their intention is often to get you to not leave them in any way. There's a lot of red flags here. If you meet someone that is like this, be careful if they're overly sexualized and throwing themselves at you. Honestly, you're probably not that hot and good looking. They're not throwing themselves at you because you're the coolest guy in the world. Guys are kind of stupid. They kind of take the bait every time. Like, oh my God, this really pretty woman wants to just have sex with me in the back seat of her car, and I just met her 20 minutes ago, and she's really cool. I must have some game. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you're falling into a trap that you will not be able to get out of. So in many of our cases that involve these types of women, they will not back down. When we waive the Article 32, or if, let's say we don't do the motions hearing, or we don't do a victim interview, which we sometimes don't do, they want to know, they'll have the lawyer be like, you don't want to interview my client? Why didn't you guys file this motion or that motion? Because the victim's asking because she wants to see the accused. Because talk about having the ultimate power. If you falsely accuse a lover who rejected you after a weekend of crazy sex, and you're a truly mentally ill, borderline personality disorder person, and you throw this allegation out there, you can really have control over and interject yourself into that service member's life for 1, 2, 3 years. And sometimes what will happen, they'll go to court and they'll be sitting there in court and they want to be in court to watch it all. They want to be in there to watch the opening statements. They want to be in there, and I see it all the time, man. They're sitting there watching the accused come and go out of court, watching his family. Like it's really sick. And they'll start befriending his friends and family members. And these are after like a weekend affair where the client rejected the woman fairly quickly, and then the woman starts stalking him. And I've had cases where that woman will start reaching out to the mother of my client, and they get, boom, a friend request from the woman who's wanting to know how their day was and wanting to stop by and get to know them. Stalker behavior. So avoid these types of people at all costs. If you're in a situation where anyone's dropping hints that they're going to accuse you, ruin your career, or destroy you, remember what I'm saying in this video, and you need to get someone to advise you and guide you out of this situation, someone who's experienced doing these cases, because they often end up going all the way in court. And it ends up being a fully contested battle where the alleged victim, the borderline personality disorder victim, who's made a fake claim, they will modify their testimony and their statements in a way that it fits our opening statement and it fits the cross-examination. And they'll figure out from our motions practice, motions that we file, what we're arguing, what we're saying, and they will sometimes fabricate evidence. They will come in with spliced together recordings, with fake text messages. I have seen it all. The good thing is, if you do your work, you can usually expose these people fairly easily if you're experienced at it. Otherwise, they're very intimidating, because how do you cross-examine someone who is a crazy, manipulative liar who wants you to either be with them or wants to see you in prison. Because if they can't have you, then no one can. How do you cross-examine someone like that who's been practicing their entire life how to lie, manipulate, and be deceptive, who the prosecution has coached? And the prosecution always believes these women. I've never had a prosecutor who's like, nah, you know what, this person is not telling the truth. Even when we prove to them with evidence, they're always like, well, look at her demeanor. Because a crazy person can cry on cue. A crazy, mentally ill person can sit there and look you in the eye and say things. And I had this argument with the prosecutor the other day. I said, if I came up to you crying and said that I was attacked in the hallway and I was crying and emotional, based on that alone, would you prosecute that person and put him in jail? And the guy said, no, I have to investigate. I said, why? Because in the case you're prosecuting my client for, you did nothing but take her word for it. And your decision to prosecute was based primarily on her demeanor. Like, people cry all the time. Some people are very good at crying. Some people are crazy. People can cry and manipulate and do all sorts of things and lie to your face. And it doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. Borderline personality disorder, people are out there. People suffer from that. It's a very serious, almost incurable mental illness. You can't treat it with any drugs. It's very difficult to treat with therapy. And it leads to and is part of many military sexual assault allegations and fake or false military sexual assault allegations or rape claims. So if you're in the military or a civilian and you're being falsely accused of a sexual assault or falsely accused of a rape, you need to talk to a lawyer that is experienced dealing with these types of crazy victims and mentally ill patients and cross-examining them, exposing them in front of the jury. Because if you go in there with an amateur or someone who doesn't know what they're doing, you could be sitting in prison for a crime that you didn't commit.